Aquarius, listen carefully. If your life feels strangely quiet right now, not peaceful, just empty in a way you can't explain, this message is for you. Because the biggest changes don't arrive with noise. They arrive when nothing seems wrong, yet something inside you is already leaving. You won't see it coming. You won't be ready. And when it happens, you won't know what to do. Not because you're weak, but because this moment is meant to break the version of you that has been surviving instead of living. If this resonates with you, type "I'm ready" in the comments. Not for me, but for yourself. Because what you're about to hear next is not a prediction. It's the beginning of a truth you've been avoiding for a long time. And once you recognize it, there's no going back. Aquarius, I want to speak to you like I would to someone sitting across from me in a quiet room, late at night, when the world finally stops demanding answers. There is a kind of silence that feels different from rest. Not peaceful, not empty either. More like a pause that feels too long, as if time itself is holding its breath around you. You may not even know what you are waiting for. You just feel it. In the way you stare out the window a little longer than usual. In the way familiar places suddenly feel distant. In the way your heart keeps asking questions your mind cannot organize yet. Aquarius, you are ruled by air, but your soul has always moved like water. Quiet on the surface, deep underneath. You sense things long before they become visible. That is your gift, and sometimes your burden. There are moments when your intuition speaks in whispers, not loud enough to demand action, just loud enough to make you restless. You start noticing that your reactions are slower, your patience thinner, your laughter softer. Not because you are losing yourself, but because you are outgrowing the version of life you have been living. And that can feel confusing, because nothing is technically wrong, no crisis to escape from, no disaster to explain, just a subtle awareness that something inside you is shifting its weight, like a tide preparing to turn. Have you felt that lately, that gentle discomfort that has no clear reason but refuses to leave? Aquarius, this is often how your transformations begin. Not with endings, but with a quiet realization that your inner world is no longer aligned with your outer one. 2, you start sensing that you are carrying conversations you no longer want to repeat, responsibilities that no longer feel meaningful, dreams that once inspired you but now feel borrowed from another version of yourself. And the hardest part is this. You cannot explain it to anyone, not in a way that feels true. So you keep it to yourself. You smile, you function. You remain intelligent and composed, while something sacred inside you is slowly rearranging the furniture. Aquarius, you are not broken. You are in a state of recalibration, the kind that happens before clarity, before release. Before the moment when life gently places a question in your hands that you can no longer avoid answering. Sometimes the universe does not push you forward. It simply creates enough inner tension that staying becomes more uncomfortable than leaving. And that is when change begins. Not as a decision, not as a plan, but as a quiet emotional truth that settles into your chest and stays there. Let me ask you something softly. If nothing in your life had to make sense to anyone else, what would you allow yourself to want right now? You do not need to respond. Just notice what your body feels when the question appears. That sensation is already part of what is coming. Aquarius, your life is not about to collapse. It is about to become more honest, more aligned, more real. And honesty is always gentle at first. It arrives as a feeling, a subtle knowing. A shift you cannot explain, but cannot unfeel either. This is not the end of anything. It is the moment before the truth introduces itself. And once you recognize it, even quietly, even in your own private way, you will never experience your life the same again. Aquarius. There is a certain kind of tired that sleep does not fix. Not the tired of the body, but the tired of carrying a story that no longer feels like yours. You may notice it in small moments. When someone asks how you are, and you pause just a little too long before answering. When you listen to conversations you once enjoyed, and feel as if you are standing slightly outside your own life, observing instead of participating. It is not sadness. It is not disappointment. It is something quieter. A soft distance growing between who you are becoming and what you are still doing every day. Aquarius, you have always lived a few steps ahead of the present. Your mind travels into futures before your body catches up. So when your inner world changes, your outer world often feels slow to respond. People still see the version of you that works, adapts, understands. But inside, you are already shifting into someone who wants more than survival. You may find yourself exhausted by explaining things you used to explain easily. Not because others are wrong, but because the words no longer feel accurate. The language of your old self no longer fits the shape of your current truth. And that creates a strange loneliness. Being surrounded by people, yet feeling unseen in the way that actually matters. Smiling in familiar places, while sensing that your spirit has quietly packed its bags. Have you felt that gentle resistance inside when you imagine repeating the same year again? Aquarius, this discomfort is not a problem. It is an invitation. Your nervous system is simply telling you that your emotional needs have changed faster than your life structure. You are no longer motivated by proving anything. Status feels less impressive. Achievements feel less satisfying. You start craving meaning instead of momentum. Depth instead of speed. Connection instead of performance. And that shift can feel unsettling because the world rewards consistency while your soul is asking for evolution. You might wonder if something is wrong with you, why your interests are fading, why your tolerance is shrinking, why certain dreams now feel strangely hollow. But Aquarius, this is not loss. This is refinement. Your inner compass is recalibrating, letting go of what no longer resonates, even if it once felt important. There is a sacred discomfort that appears right before a new layer of self-awareness. It does not scream, it hums, a low frequency in your chest, reminding you that growth is not always exciting. Sometimes it is simply uncomfortable honesty. Let me ask you something quietly. If no one expected anything from you, what would you stop pretending to enjoy? Notice what comes up first. That answer is not random. It is your intuition attempting to breathe. Aquarius, you are entering a phase where your emotional world becomes more sensitive, not weaker. You are learning to listen to subtle signals, the ones you used to ignore in favor of logic. This is the moment when your life begins to feel too small, not because it lacks opportunity, but because your awareness has expanded. And expansion always creates friction at first, between what is familiar and what is quietly calling you forward. You do not need to fix anything yet. You do not need to make decisions. You only need to recognize one truth. The restlessness you feel is not confusion. It is alignment slowly forming. Your soul is not bored. It is awakening. And once you allow yourself to sit with that feeling, without labeling it as wrong or inconvenient, you may begin to sense something else beneath it. a gentle pull, not toward escape, but toward a more authentic way of existing. Aquarius. This is how clarity begins, not with answers, but with the courage to admit that your inner world is changing, even if the world around you has not noticed yet. Aquarius. There is a quiet shift that happens when your truth begins to surface. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough for others to feel it before you even say a word. You may notice it in their tone, in the way questions become sharper, in the way silence feels heavier than usual. People who once felt close now seem slightly cautious around you, as if they are sensing a version of you they are not fully ready to meet. And the truth is, your honesty is changing the emotional temperature of the room. Not because you are cold, but because you are no longer pretending to be warm when something inside you feels misaligned. Aquarius, you have always been gentle with others. You learned early how to adapt, how to soften your edges, how to keep the peace even when it cost you clarity. But now, something in you is done with shrinking. Not in anger, in awareness. This is where tension is born. Not from conflict, but from contrast. Between who you were willing to be for others and who you are finally becoming for yourself. Some people may feel unsettled. They might say you are distant, different, harder to read. But what they are really noticing is that you are no longer available for emotional roles that no longer fit your soul. And that can feel threatening to those who built comfort around your consistency. They were used to your understanding, your patience, your ability to hold space without asking for much in return. Now, you ask for presence. You ask for truth. You ask for emotional reciprocity. And not everyone knows how to respond to that. So the resistance begins, subtle at first. A comment here, a joke there, a suggestion that you are changing too much, as if growth is something to apologize for. Let me ask you something softly. When someone feels uncomfortable with your evolution, do you feel guilty for becoming real? Aquarius, this tension is not a sign to retreat. It is a sign that your inner world is finally visible on the outside. You are no longer hiding your needs behind logic. You are no longer filtering your truth to keep others calm, and that is powerful. Because honesty does not always create harmony. Sometimes it reveals where harmony was only performance. You might feel torn, wanting to stay kind, wanting to stay connected, yet sensing that certain bonds now require you to be smaller than you are willing to be. This is where emotional maturity begins. Not in cutting people off, but in allowing yourself to be seen even if it changes how others feel about you. Some will adapt, some will grow with you, some will quietly drift away. Not because you failed them, but because your frequency no longer matches their comfort. And that is not rejection, that is alignment. Aquarius, your honesty is not meant to isolate you. It is meant to attract relationships that can hold your depth without fear. Connections that do not need you to explain yourself constantly. People who recognize your silence as presence, not absence. There is a strange beauty in this phase. Watching who stays. Watching who listens differently. Watching who finally meets you where you are, not where you used to be. And yes, it may feel lonely at times. Standing in your truth often does, but loneliness born from authenticity is still safer than belonging built on self-betrayal. You are not becoming unpredictable. You are becoming transparent. And transparency changes everything. Aquarius, this tension is not an ending. It is a threshold between old dynamics that required you to perform and new connections that invite you to simply exist. And the more you allow yourself to remain honest, Even when it feels uncomfortable, the more your life will quietly reorganize around people who can truly see you. Not the version that kept everyone comfortable, but the version that finally feels like home to you. Aquarius. There is a moment when the universe does not knock. It simply brushes past your life, lightly, almost casually, the way a breeze moves a curtain you forgot was even there. It does not arrive with thunder, no warning signs, no dramatic music. Just a simple interaction that feels ordinary on the surface, so ordinary that your mind almost dismisses it. And yet, something in your body knows before your thoughts do. You feel it in your chest, that subtle tightening, that quiet alertness. As if your nervous system recognizes a doorway your logic has not processed yet. It could be a sentence someone says, a look that lingers longer than expected, a message you almost ignore, a possibility that does not fit your plans, but fits your soul in a way you cannot explain. And suddenly, time feels different, not rushed, not slow, just meaningful. Aquarius, this is how real change enters your life. Not as chaos, not as destruction, but as a gentle invitation disguised as coincidence. This is where most people hesitate, because the moment does not look big enough to justify the feeling it creates. So they question it, analyze it, delay it. But you feel something else, a strange familiarity, as if your future self is quietly standing behind you, placing a hand on your shoulder, whispering without words, "This matters." And what makes it powerful is not what happens. It is what awakens inside you. A clarity that was not available before. A sense of alignment that does not need proof. For the first time in a long while, you are not choosing based on fear, not based on obligation, not based on who you are supposed to be. You are choosing based on resonance, on truth, on that deep inner yes that does not shout, but does not fade either. Let me ask you something softly. When was the last time a small moment changed the direction of your entire life? Because that is what this is. A pivot point hidden inside simplicity. A timeline shift wearing the costume of an everyday event. You may not understand it yet, and you do not need to. This is not a decision made by the mind. It is a recognition made by the soul. And once you feel it, you cannot unfeel it. The old patterns begin to loosen. The old excuses feel hollow. The old timeline no longer fits your energy, not because something ended, but because something finally began. Aquarius, this is the kind of moment that does not announce itself as destiny. It asks you to trust your intuition before your world reflects the change. It is quiet, but it is irreversible. From the outside, nothing seems different. You still look the same. Your life still looks familiar. But inside, you have already crossed a line. A line between waiting and participating. Between imagining and becoming. Between surviving your story and stepping into it. And here is the beautiful part. You do not have to force anything. You do not have to prove anything. You simply have to stay present enough to recognize when life opens a door without labeling it as a miracle. Because the real miracles in your life will always arrive disguised as normal days. And once you step through, even gently, even hesitantly, you will realize that nothing was random. It was just perfectly timed. Not for who you used to be, but for who you are finally ready to become. Aquarius. There is a very specific kind of silence that arrives right after a door opens. Not the peaceful kind, not the restful kind, but the kind where your mind goes quiet because it suddenly realizes it no longer has control. Everything inside you pauses. Your thoughts slow down. Your body feels suspended, as if gravity has briefly forgotten your name. You are not confused. You are overwhelmed by clarity. This is the moment no one prepares you for. The moment when possibility becomes real. When imagination turns into choice. When your inner world meets the edge of action. And for a second, you freeze. Not because you do not want to move, but because every direction feels meaningful. And meaning is heavy when you have carried responsibility for so long. You have spent years being careful, reading the room, managing expectations, staying emotionally intelligent in environments that rewarded stability more than truth. So when life finally offers you something aligned, something that actually matches your energy, your system does not know how to respond immediately. It is like waking up in a body that no longer fits the rules you memorized. Your heart is racing. Your chest feels open and tight at the same time. Part of you wants to leap forward. Part of you wants to sit very still and pretend this is not happening yet. This is not fear of failure. This is fear of expansion. Failure is familiar. Discomfort is familiar. But becoming more than you planned for requires a new identity. And identities are not changed with logic. They dissolve slowly, quietly, in the space between breaths. Let me ask you something gently. If you knew for certain that choosing differently would change your life forever, would you still want certainty before you moved? Because this moment is not asking for confidence. It is asking for honesty, for presence, for the courage to admit that you have outgrown the version of yourself that felt safe. Most people wait for the fear to disappear, but fear does not leave at the edge of transformation. It walks beside it, not as a warning, but as proof that you are stepping into something real. And you, Aquarius, you have always been sensitive to invisible shifts, to emotional undercurrents, to the quiet signals others ignore. So when you feel stuck between excitement and hesitation, it is not because you are broken. It is because your nervous system is recalibrating to a new future. This pause is not failure. It is integration. It is the moment your soul catches up with what your spirit already chose. And yes, many people stop here. They label this feeling as doubt. They retreat into routines. They convince themselves that timing was wrong or the risk was too high. But deep down, they know. They did not miss the opportunity. They missed themselves. You do not have to rush. You do not have to force movement. But do not confuse stillness with avoidance. There is a difference between resting in a moment and hiding from it. This space you are in right now is not empty. It is sacred. It is where old timelines dissolve, where your future self waits patiently, not pushing, just watching to see if you are finally ready to choose a life that feels alive. And maybe the real question is not what will happen if you move forward. Maybe the real question is what will happen to your soul if you do not. Aquarius, there is a deeper kind of fear that does not feel dramatic. It does not shake your hands. It does not steal your breath. It sits quietly behind your thoughts, like a shadow that learned how to look reasonable. It sounds like practicality. It sounds like maturity. It sounds like common sense. But it is not. It is the fear of becoming someone new after you worked so hard to become who you are. You built this life carefully, brick by brick, year by year. You learned how to be dependable, how to stay composed, how to hold your emotions in rooms that were not built to hold them with you. You learned how to survive systems, work systems, relationship systems, family systems. You learned how to be needed, how to be trusted, how to be the one who does not fall apart. And now, Something inside you is asking for more. Not louder, not faster, just truer. And that is terrifying in a way few people admit, because failure would at least feel familiar. You know how to rebuild after collapse. You have done it before. But success? Success changes the rules. Success means you might outgrow people, outgrow roles, outgrow environments that once defined you. It means you might no longer recognize yourself in the mirror of your old life. And that is the real question your soul is holding. Not can I do this, but who will I become if I do? You are not afraid of losing money, or status, or routines. You are afraid of losing the version of you that learned how to belong. Because belonging took effort. It took compromise. It took emotional intelligence. It took choosing peace over truth more times than you want to admit. So when your inner voice now whispers there is more for you, it does not feel exciting at first. It feels disorienting, like standing on a familiar shore and suddenly realizing the tide has changed direction. You are not being asked to abandon your past. You are being asked to release your attachment to it. There is a difference. Your history is not a cage, but your identity might be. And maybe the most honest fear you carry is this: if I let myself evolve, will I still be loved for who I become, or only for who I used to be? That is not a spiritual question. That is a human one. Let me ask you something softly. If no one expected anything from you, if no one needed you to stay the same, who would you allow yourself to be? Because right now, your soul is not craving change. It is craving permission. Permission to stop maintaining a life that no longer reflects your inner world. Permission to admit that stability without meaning is just a beautiful form of emotional silence. You have been responsible for so long that you forgot responsibility was supposed to serve life, not replace it. And maybe this moment is not about risk. It is about alignment, not about burning everything down, but about finally letting yourself grow up again, not into someone smaller, but into someone more honest. Someone who does not live just to keep things running. Someone who lives to feel awake inside their own story. The real fear is not that you will lose what you built. The real fear is that you will discover you were always capable of building something better. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Because from that point on, the question is no longer can I stay the same? It becomes, do I still want to? Aquarius. There is something I have learned after listening to hundreds of stories and living through a few transformations of my own. The universe is not here to break you. It is here to mature you. And maturity does not arrive with destruction. It arrives with a quiet sense of mismatch. Like wearing a jacket that once felt perfect, but now sits strangely on your shoulders. Nothing is wrong with the jacket. You just grew. This is what most people misunderstand about change. They expect chaos. They expect loss. They expect some dramatic ending. But real endings do not announce themselves. They fade gently into irrelevance. You wake up one day and realize the role you have been playing no longer excites you. The dreams you protected no longer feel like yours. The version of you that worked so hard to survive is no longer the one who needs to lead. And that can feel unsettling. Because your old identity did not fail. It succeeded. It kept you safe. It kept you functional. It kept you respected. But it was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be a season. The problem is, we get emotionally attached to our survival skills. We confuse them with our soul, so when something inside you whispers that it is time to evolve, your mind hears threat. but your spirit hears relief. Because deep down, you know this truth. You are not being asked to abandon yourself. You are being asked to stop pretending that who you were is who you still are. Let me ask you something quietly. If no one needed you to stay familiar, would you still choose the same life you are living right now? Because the universe does not remove things from your life. It simply creates conditions where you can no longer lie to yourself. Outgrowing does not feel like destruction. It feels like emotional honesty arriving late. It feels like realizing you have been loyal to a past version of you that no longer exists. And that is not a tragedy. That is completion. Your old identity did its job. It taught you how to navigate the world, how to manage relationships, how to build structure where there was uncertainty. But now, something new is forming. Not louder, not more impressive, just more aligned. A version of you that does not perform strength. A version of you that does not earn worth. A version of you that no longer needs to explain itself. And this version does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives with a sense of quiet recognition. Like finally hearing your own voice after years of speaking in echoes. You may feel like you are losing something, but what you are really losing is the need to be understood by everyone. You are stepping into a phase where your life does not need to make sense to others. It only needs to feel honest to you. That is what stops the pretending. Not rebellion, not escape, just alignment. And alignment feels simple, but it changes everything. Because once you stop performing your old identity, you realize you were never stuck. You were just loyal to a story that had already ended. And now, the next story is waiting. Not for the version of you who survived, but for the version of you who is finally ready to live without an audience. Aquarius, preparation does not feel the way the world taught you it should. It does not arrive with checklists, or 5-year plans, or the illusion of being fully ready. Real preparation feels much quieter, almost invisible. It begins with noticing what lights up inside you when no one is watching. The thoughts that return when your mind is tired. The dreams you never mention out loud because they feel too personal to defend. You start paying attention to small signals, the kind that do not shout. A feeling of ease in certain conversations, a gentle pull toward ideas you cannot explain, a strange peace when you imagine a different life, even if it scares you. This is not imagination. This is memory from the future. And at the same time, you begin to notice discomfort. Not the dramatic kind, but the subtle resistance in your body. The tightness when you say yes too quickly. The fatigue that appears in places that once gave you energy. You realize that unease is not an enemy. It is a message. It is your soul saying this version of you has done enough. It is time to rest from pretending. Let me ask you something gently. What are you still holding on to only because it once protected you? Because letting go does not mean rejecting your past. It means releasing your loyalty to it. You do not have to erase who you were. You just have to stop building your future from an old identity. There's a deep kind of forgiveness in that, not just for others, but for yourself. Forgiving the version of you that stayed too long, that played small when it felt safer, that confused being needed with being fulfilled. And as you loosen your grip, something interesting happens. You stop forcing clarity. You stop demanding certainty from life. You allow yourself to move with curiosity instead of fear. Preparation becomes a state of presence, not knowing the destination, but trusting the direction of your energy. And this is where courage lives. Not in loud declarations, not in dramatic leaps, but in quiet decisions. choosing honesty over comfort, choosing alignment over approval, choosing to feel alive even if it means feeling vulnerable, because courage does not feel powerful, it feels exposed. It feels like standing in front of a new chapter without rehearsing your role. It feels like admitting you do not have control and realizing that control was never the point. The moment will come. Not as a perfect opportunity, not as a flawless invitation. It will arrive imperfectly, with unanswered questions, with shaking hands, with a heart that is open and afraid at the same time. And in that moment, you will not need proof. You will not need permission. You will not need a guarantee. You will only need to trust the version of you that has been quietly growing beneath the surface. The one who listened, the one who felt, the one who stayed present through discomfort. Because that version already knows. Not exactly where you are going, but exactly who you are becoming. And maybe that is the real preparation. Not building certainty about the future, but building a relationship with yourself strong enough to walk into it without armor. So when you finally take that step, even gently, even trembling, you will realize something beautiful. You were never meant to feel ready. You were meant to feel real. And real is always enough to begin. Aquarius, before you leave this space, I want you to notice something. You are still here, not just listening, but feeling, breathing differently than when you arrived. More present, more aware of the quiet movement inside you. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. Something in you recognized this message not as information, but as a reflection, a mirror you did not know you were searching for. And maybe the most surprising part of all this is not what you learned, but what you remembered. That you are allowed to change. That your inner voice deserves space. That your life does not have to make sense to everyone to be meaningful to you. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late to anything. You are exactly where awareness begins. So wherever you are right now, in your room, in your car, in the middle of another long day, take one slow breath with me. Let it go gently. As if you are releasing a version of yourself that no longer needs to carry everything. Because the next chapter of your life will not ask you to become someone new. It will ask you to become more honest. And honesty is the most powerful form of healing. If something in this story touched you, if a sentence stayed with you longer than the others, I want you to leave a comment. Not for me, for yourself. Write one word that describes how you feel right now. That word will become a signal, a quiet commitment to your own growth. And if you want to continue this journey together, if you feel this space resonates with who you are becoming, subscribe and stay connected. Because this is not just a channel, it is a frequency. A place for Aquarians who are ready to live with awareness instead of autopilot. The next message is already forming. The next story is already waiting. Not somewhere outside of you, but inside the version of you that just chose to listen. So trust yourself tonight. Trust the timing of your life. Trust the gentle shifts that do not need proof. Your path does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be true. And the most beautiful part is this. You are not walking it alone. We are here, breathing, growing, becoming. Together, the journey continues.